Hello ladies and gentlemen, back to German Adults Team LA Like. Welcome back to another One Piece manga reaction thing. This is a bit of a different reaction, as I can't really call a review because, like, I've already read through the chapter, already gotten surprised and stuff like that. So really, I'm just giving my thoughts slash reactions, so might as well call it a reaction, that's why that is. So, yeah, this chapter is chapter 9-10. We're reacting to chapter of One Piece, chapter 9-10. Onwards to Wano Country. And you know what, it's something that I have to mention, but I'll talk about later. But yeah, for this particular video, it's gonna be another one of those slightly reading slash already summary of what happens in each chapter, because it's already like gotten through most of them, so I really don't need to explain too much. So let's hurry up and get through this chapter, shall we? The cover page has Orlumbus again, and it's a very long serial series for this guy. It seems like as if he's either very important or he's gonna be having some type of surprise to him. I'm betting $10 he's gonna like encounter Shanks or another Yonko to some degree, because they spend a lot of time with him, other than the other Straw Hats and the other Straw Hat Grand Fleet characters. But the interesting thing about this particular chapter is the fact that it says, like, you know, the Tales of Self-Proclaimed Grand Fleet Volume 40, Orlumbus Arc, at 4:30 p.m. Because they were extremely poor, we gave them supplies instead. Okay, yeah, Orlumbus attacked a island that was kind of in ruins from what we saw before, and instead of destroying it completely, he stops his attack and he actually decides to give off food to the natives of that island, which is kind of nice, actually. Let's see, real quick. What time did he attack those other guys, or their particular island? He's like, the last chapter was 9:09, and he started his attack there, and they were firing upon this poor island country. So you know, at some time they did it. Let me double check. It was around 4 p.m. Right? Okay. So it was 30 minutes. This was 30 minutes. So after 30 minutes of attacking, they decided to stop. And you know, this connects this particular thing to the previous thing that Marco said in the last chapter, because Marco said that, like, certain countries and islands can't pay the Tenryubitos or the Celestial Dragons heavenly tax and tribute thing. So some of them are just left to be by themselves, and they're really poor, so they really can't do much for themselves. And it's kind of nice to see that Orlumbus is actually helping them. I'm pretty sure, like, there was an image of, like, the Straw Hat Grand Fleet people as baby characters or kids, and I think Orlumbus looked poor-esque, so this kind of makes some sense. But this also connected to the previous thing from before, where, like, all the characters were, not all the characters, like, they said about, like, Whitebeard, he was poor, and certain island countries can be poor because nobody, not even, like, the world government helps them. So that's kind of nice to see that, you know, Orlumbus is helping here. So maybe he might become a little bit of a better pirate than I expected. Like, I thought he was going to go down a bad route, but it seems like as if he's going to be a good sort of guy. And I'm not sure what he's going to do from here, because I think this looks like the end of his arc. At least it seems like as if it's the end, so I don't know. But anyway, we go out back to the, well, we sort of head back to Wano. Actually, we head on to where the Sunny is, and where Luffy, Brooks, Chopper, Carrot, Sanji are. And they're just discovering, or at least knowing about the whole situation that's going on with the, what do you call it, Reverie. They're talking about, like, how everyone they know is there, sort of. Like, at least they talk about, like, you know, Shirahoshi and how she's there. And Luffy mockingly calls her weak Hoshi, which is kind of, like, insulting. Calm down, Luffy. Like, you didn't call Kobe weak Obi when you first met him, so calm down there, Luffy. It's like he doesn't like people who are weak, and I understand that, but at the same time, it's like, a lot of people, even some of your crew members, could be considered weak. You don't call them weak, do you? But anyway, yeah, so they talk about, like, each individual person, or at least some people they know and see. Like, you know, Rebecca, Viola. I call her Viola, but some people call her different. I don't care. They also mention Wapo and I forget the guy's name. He's the guy that everyone knows. He's the Buffalo guy. the guy who hates Wapple. I forget his name. Oh wait, it's Dulcin. Right, Dulcin's there. They also mentioned Rebecca and Sai. Although they don't have everyone there, like in these pictures, so I think that they have these pictures and they know the people that are there, but they can't mention some people who might not, might be there, but they didn't see them. Like, the small character that Sai was with. What was his name? I forget. He's one of the small dwarf characters. I forget his name, but whatever. But also another little scene that happens with this particular mention of characters, because it's the royal families and, their escorts. One of them, which was, Garp, which Luffy does mention, well, actually, someone mentions that, oh yeah, Garp escorted the fishermen people, and Luffy was just like, okay. But one of the escorts that they mentioned for the Drum Kingdom, especially for Dulcin, is that Dr. Kureha's there, and it's kind of a nice scene where Chopper is just like, oh, the doctoring, and you know what, this is understandable because he was like, it's been like a lot of months when he left the island with Luffy and the others at Sambaoni, and then it became 2 years since he's seen Dr. Kureha. So it's been like a lot of months and 2 years since he's seen Dr. Kureha. It's been almost 3 years almost, if you really count it. But yeah, anyway, the thing that Chopper does that's kind of dumb, but that's kind of dumb, but it's kind of dumb on his part, but also Sanji does it too. It's like, hey, don't cut the newspaper, Chopper. But then all of a sudden, he has photos of the other sexy women Viola, Rebecca, Vivi. He has their pictures cut out too in the next image. So it's like, you have no right to talk, Sanji. You cut out a lot of papers. But yeah, Chopper cut out the image of Kureha because he wants it. But there's a little bit of an image of Big Mom in the back, and what was it? Yeah, Nami was reading the newspaper, and she does mention the fact that, there was an article about Big Mom and Kaido, but she can't read it now because the images are cut out. But unfortunately, Sanjay and Chopper are a little bit, they're kind of they're not making this easy for her, because, she's asking for those pieces back, but then, Chopper and Nam and Sanjay are like, no way. So, but anyway, Luffy does try to contact the rest of the Straw Hat gang members, or maybe whoever he's supposed to contact with, the transponder snail. But it's radio silent, so I assume no one's there, or they can't reach him. Maybe they can reach him, but they just can't talk about him, but whatever. But in the next chapter, or at least the next page, it's a double spread. There's a lot of double spreads for this whole thing, so it's kind of yeah, there's more chapters, but at the same time, there's spaces where there's not much the particular spaces. These spaces are open and empty because it's these double spreads take up a few pages, so it's kind of a bit here and there, depending on how you feel about it. But anyway, they actually talk about the current situation weather here. And you know what, this kind of makes sense for Wano, because it's kind of it would be one thing if they had strong warriors to keep people out. It's another thing if their geography didn't allow people to just enter Wano easily, which kind of makes sense. The thing I can see Wano being is on an elevated plane. An elevated plane that requires people to climb up instead of having ships. And it's sort of it's sort of hinted at and referred to that in the next particular page after this one. I will say, yes, you're seeing an octopus right there, and no, they haven't noticed it until the next page. So the weather of the entire place is just completely, seemingly rough, or at least dark and dreary skies with a lot of moving water. And then all of a sudden, they finally noticed the octopus that was there. And yes, I did notice a couple of things, and I noticed it. I was wondering how long it took them to do it. But in the previous chapter where they were talking about the pages that were cut out, you can see a little of this splash, and even the octopus's leg is shown in one of the particular images. And then all of a sudden, he's just there, and he starts doing stuff. Now, this is kind of, from what I've heard, this is supposed to be kind of a whole, you ever seen those Japanese painted mask dances where this person dances about and moves and shakes his head? They go ooh, yeah. A One Piece comparison that's close to this, that's easy to do, is the Kumadori from CP9. He was kind of like this particular archetype of a Japanese dancer sort of thing. He was based off the lion dance, and basically he just did odd movements and sounds, and you can, and that's something you can notice, and that's exactly what he was. He was just like, and he did some other stuff, and he's based off of that type of dancer sort of thing. So this type of octopus, from what I've heard, is supposed to be like that, because it makes those sounds that that go with that particular dancing thing, which I'm not sure, but whatever. But we go on to another thing where it's a school of, but for the next particular scene that goes on after this is that we actually get to a school of large fish, and at first I thought they were koi fish, but it turns out they're carp. I guess they could be koi fish or carp, but whatever. But anyway, yeah. So there's carp in the water that can be easily seen, but they talk about how are they here exactly, because this isn't like this is the ocean. This isn't supposed to be like fresh water. How are they surviving? And I thought this was kind of a reference to the all blue, but no, this leads into something else. But before that, Sanjay mentions that, well, actually, Luffy asks whether or not these things would be good to eat, but Sanjay mentions how you can cook them, and Luffy just jumps straight onto the back of one of them and kind of gets carried off by them, sort of. I thought this is where they'd be split up, and it kind of makes sense, but nope. But nah, Luffy's just alright, and I like how the fact that Nami screams, "Why are you always like this? You spent nearly months, nearly a couple of months with the guy. You should know how he acts." But yeah, in the next double spread page, this has a lot of double spreads. But anyway, they come onto a couple of rough waters, and the weird octopus just keeps going. He just keeps doing this. And they mention how the water's clear and the water just moves about. It's a weird pattern. It's like, what is this? It's following doing they're going up a stream-esque system. It seems weird that way. But then we come up to the reason why the carp are here and why there's stuff here. It turns out the carp are coming or going to a waterfall, which explains the fresh water. Because Nami mentions that, the fresh water, this water must come from a reservoir at the top of the mount of this waterfall. There's a lake or a large body of water up there, which leads from Wano to here, that goes down here and just pours into the ocean, which could explain the fresh water, honestly. Geography and environmental wise, this kind of makes sense. So this sort of has its merits here and there. But Luffy actually gets back onto the ship, surprisingly enough. It's like, oh, those things are strong, and he just gets back on. It's like, oh, wow, I did not expect you to just be here. But yeah, the waterfall is going down, and they're heading towards the waterfall, which I kind of don't understand, because it's like a stream going down the mountain and it's pushing you guys back, but you guys are heading towards it. I can understand it if to some mechanism in the Sunny is making you go forward, but literally you guys unfurled the sail, so I don't understand what's happening here, but whatever. The thing Luffy does is kind of a bit helpful, but it doesn't. It's like one of those things Luffy, a Luffy plan would happen, and you'd expect it to just go completely awry. Because a couple of his plans include just him going straight into business, oh, let's launch ourselves up through this gate, and wherever we land, it's gonna be fine. This time it actually kind of turns out well, because he grabs onto 2 carp and holds onto the ship, and he actually has the ship, drag itself. He drags it and the ship up the waterfall by grabbing onto, the carp. The carp. And due to the carp swimming upstream, they carry the Sunny up the stream with them. Yeah, so they climb up the waterfall, and you know what? It turns out pretty alright for a second. It's like, oh hey, this actually worked. It actually turned out pretty well for them. But then there's a counter current at the top of this waterfall, possibly like a lake sort of thing, and it leads to a whirlpool that sucks them in, which is kind of a bit I won't blame Luffy for that, because that's something that literally I don't think he could have expected. For once, one of his ideas where he just straight up does something that's sort of instinctual, hey, let's grab onto these fish to climb ourselves up to the top, doesn't technically lead them too bad into something. But, you know, I can't blame him for the waterfall. That's one thing I can't blame him for. But anyway, after being swept away, the Sunny ends up on shore, just with Luffy on its side, and Luffy's there sleeping, passed out. Well, he's gonna wake up in a second because a crab comes around and snips his nose, and he just throws it away. And no one's there with him, so he's by himself. So this is kind of how they separated, which I thought beforehand they would have separated from the whole, like, Luffy grabbing onto a carp, which would have made sense. But here they decided to have him just separate due to a whirlpool, which is kind of a bit weird, but whatever. Luffy wakes up and he thinks he's in he's questioning whether or not he's in Wano and where everyone is, and then all of a sudden an animal comes flying out from the forest on towards the Sunny, and it sort of harms the ship, or at least you know, Luffy says, "Hey, don't destroy my ship," and it's a weird creature. I've seen these things before. I don't know its name, like species name, but Luffy thinks it's a dog, a fighting dog or a pig, and it kind of has a pig snout, and it looks sort of like a lion dog. I don't know. I've seen these things in both, like, mythology for Japan, and as well as, like, statue shrines that protect, like, you know, buildings in Japan, like that type of stuff. I've seen those things before, so I assume it's one of those things, especially with its fur design. But the weird thing is that I see about this thing, at least in a little contextual way, is that snap, crack, snap, another huge animal appears, as what Luffy says. But this thing came flying in from a certain direction, seemingly. And the weird thing is this thing is bleeding, at least near its forehead, like near the top of its eyes. And another creature appears, the baboon. Some type of creature that wolfs and is carrying a large sword. And this thing kind of reminds me of those other monkey baboon things that attacked Zoro on Mihawk's Island, which I'm pretty sure it's the same type of species. Or at least like a subspecies, because it's carrying a large sword, and it seems like as if it could know how to use it. But yeah, Luffy is dealing with a big baboon and this weird dog pig thing. And the chapter just ends with Luffy kind of just saying, like, it's holding the sword, as I thought. This must be the Wano country, the smell of adventure. I find that funny that tips in that Luffy is on Wano. Like, that tips Luffy in on the fact that you're in Wano, you know, the whole, as I thought. This must be Wano because there's a monkey holding a sword. I know baboons could not be considered monkeys, maybe, I'm not sure, I really don't care. But the thing I can see happening in the next chapter is that Luffy helps out the weird dog pig thing against the baboon, because it seems like as if these two are fighting, because in one of the pages it looks like as if this thing was flung towards the Sunny from somewhere in the forest, and he's bleeding from his forehead on his right side, like near his eye. So, and also the baboon's bleeding a little bit on his left eye, atop his left eye. It seems to be going down. So I assume that the baboon either picked the fight with the dog thing to kill it for food, or the dog pig thing picked the fight with the baboon, and it's defending itself. But I bet Luffy's gonna help either one of these two, or Luffy's gonna beat the hell out of one of these two. Because, like, it's sort of like, you know, like the whole giant squid monster thing from the Fishman Island arc. I forgot his name. Suramana? I forget his name. But it's gotta be one of those things where it's like another animal buddy that they're gonna help, but have him, like, just slightly helping him in some degree. Because Luffy's been known to sort of tame / have animal friends help him or protect him, or he's just helped a lot of animals here and there. It's like every single arc needs to have one animal that's either a friend, ally, or just there. Like during the Romance Dawn arc, Shushu, or at least the dog, I think the dog named Shushu, I think that's his name, was something that the Straw Hats helped, or at least Luffy helped out. And then in like the opening of the Grand Line arc, when they were heading to the Grand Line, there was the whale Laboon, and then in like Annie's lobby there were those two large seahorse things, or sea beast things. I don't know what you call them, but there were those things. And then there was more and more, but you get what I mean. So yeah, that's the end of this chapter arc. I can't wait to see what happens next. There's no break next week, thank goodness, so... This chapter was quick. It was, like, you know, it didn't really introduce much. And compared to the other 5 to 10 chapters that have been happening so far, you know, with all the reviews and stuff and all the hype building up, this one's a little bit more lighter in content. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just like, you know, it's less than that. So we kind of have to expect this. Like, we can't expect everything to be hype now, so we have to have some cooling down periods. So maybe afterwards people will be okay with, like, One Piece going a little bit down a little bit, like, oh, let's calm down a bit and actually see what's happening. So that's kind of alright. So yeah, that's the end of this One Piece chapter. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, comment, subscribe for more, and I'll see you all next time for the next video. Until then, take care, my bots. Sayonara.